Who was the most dangerous person at your school? Sunshine was the girl who could make you smile through tears. We called her Sunshine because she wore these bright yellow cardigans that made her look like hope in human form. When Travis Vaughn was destroying some freshmen for wearing knockoff Jordans, Sunshine just walked up and said, "Your hair looks really nice today, Travis. Did you try something new?" This 6'2" wrestler literally forgot what he was angry about, standing there confused while the freshman escaped. Her little sister Eden was a freshman, anxious and quiet, but around Sunshine, Eden could breathe. We thought we were watching a protective older sister. We didn't know we were watching someone keeping another person alive. Then spring break of senior year happened, and everything changed. First day back, Sunshine walked in wearing all black. Not like cute goth girl black, but like she'd grabbed whatever was darkest in her closet without looking. She sat in the back corner of English instead of her usual front row seat. Mrs. the Carver asked her 3 times if she wanted to share her spring break story. Sunshine just stared at the wall. At lunch, instead of making her rounds with compliments, she sat alone outside on the bleachers. It was lunchtime when Sunshine started talking to me. I'd had this pathetic crush on her since 8th grade, the kind where you practice conversations in your head that never happen. "You've always been decent, Caleb," she said one day out of nowhere. "You never joined in." "Joined in what?" I asked, but my stomach was already doing that thing where it knows bad news is coming. She told me everything in this flat, mechanical voice. How a group of kids had catfished Eden for 3 months. They created this whole fake boyfriend from Cherry Blossom High, Cole, who understood her anxiety, who thought she was beautiful, who stayed up texting her through panic attacks. Eden fell hard. She sent voice messages when she was crying, pictures of her genuine smile. They made him say, "I love you" first. Eden said it back and meant it. They had her wait outside the winter formal for 4 hours. Sunshine's knuckles were white from clenching her fists. In her dress. In the cold. They filmed her from the gym windows. Everyone at the dance knew. They were taking bets on how long she'd wait. I'd dreamed about Sunshine opening up to me for 3 years, sharing secrets in the dark, but not like this. Then they put everything on the projector. Even her messages saying she was ugly and wanted to die, and that Cole was the only reason she hadn't. The whole school saw it. Everyone knew it was happening. Sunshine continued. Everyone I've been kind to for 3 years watched my sister suffer for entertainment, and no one said anything. My throat felt like sandpaper. I wanted to say I didn't know, but it felt like it didn't matter anymore. Then she grabbed my hand, and her green eyes glimmered in a way that still gave me butterflies. "I need you to do something for me. Next Thursday, keep your siblings home from school. Tell them you're all getting food poisoning or something." "Sunshine, what are you?" "I'm going to make everyone regret what they did to Eden." The way she said regret made my skin crawl. It's never going to happen again. She kept talking, trusting me with details I didn't want to hear. She was choosing me, confiding in me. How she knew exactly who was involved. How Thursday was the spring pep rally when the whole school would be in one place. My hands were sweating, but hers stayed ice cold. "You're the only one I trust," she said, squeezing my hand tighter. "The only one who was ever kind without wanting something back. So I'm warning you, keep the people you care about at home." I went home that night and threw up. The next morning I watched Sunshine walk past the kids who'd hurt Eden, and she smiled, not in the way that brightened up the hallways. It was dark, like she was planning something big. That night I couldn't sleep. I just laid there staring at the ceiling, knowing I was the only one who could do something. It was 6 a.m. when I called the school administrator. He immediately thanked me for telling him and hung up. When I went into school that day, I didn't see Sunshine anywhere. I kept refreshing news articles to see if they arrested her, but nothing came up. I was in 3rd period when I got a text from an unknown number. Just 2 words, "Get out." That's when we heard it. The principal's voice over the intercom. Lockdown, this is not a drill." The alarm started blaring right after those words, and my English teacher dropped her book and ran to the door. She turned the lock so fast her hands were shaking, and then she yanked down the window shade until we couldn't see the hallway. Everyone started moving at once, and this girl near the window let out this scared sound that wasn't quite a scream. Kids were scrambling away from the windows and pushing desks out of the way to get to the back corner. My legs felt heavy as I stood up, because I knew this was my fault somehow. The teacher was waving her arms and telling everyone to get down and stay quiet, but half the class was already crying. I grabbed my backpack and moved with everyone else to the far wall where we couldn't be seen from outside. My phone started buzzing in my pocket, and when I looked down, I had 12 texts already. People were asking what was happening, and if I'd heard anything, and whether this was real. I kept my mouth shut, because I knew way more than I should, and saying anything would make it worse. The teacher was trying to count heads and make sure everyone was there while telling us to silence our phones completely. She kept looking at the door like she expected someone to try the handle any second. More phones kept lighting up around me, and everyone was texting frantically even though we were supposed to stay quiet. I pulled out my phone and texted my younger brother who had sophomore English on the other side of the building. I told him to stay down and do exactly what his teacher said no matter what. He texted back immediately that his whole class was freaking out because someone said they heard footsteps running past their door. My stomach felt sick and tight, and the guilt was making it hard to breathe normally. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay, but I couldn't lie when I knew Sunshine was somewhere in this building. Through the tiny window in our classroom door, I saw movement, and then 2 police officers went past with their hands on their guns. They were moving fast and checking doors as they went, and that's when it really hit me. This was actually happening, and Sunshine was really doing whatever she'd planned, and people might get hurt. The girl next to me grabbed my arm so hard it hurt, and she was shaking bad. My phone lit up again with another text from that unknown number, and my hands got sweaty. It said she wasn't after me, just the guilty ones who hurt Eden. That meant Sunshine had given someone my number to keep me updated, which meant she wasn't working alone. Someone else knew about this plan and was helping her, and that made everything scarier. The principal's voice came back on the intercom, and it was different now, shaky and scared. He said all students and staff had to stay in secure positions until further notice and to follow lockdown procedures. Someone across the room whispered that they heard there was a girl with a weapon in the building. I knew that probably wasn't true because Sunshine's weapons were different from what people were thinking. She didn't need a gun or a knife to destroy people's lives forever. 20 minutes went by and nobody said anything, but you could hear people breathing hard and crying quietly. Then we heard shouting in the hallway, and something that sounded like furniture being dragged or pushed. The girl next to me was shaking so bad that her phone slipped out of her hand. The sound it made hitting the floor made everyone jump and gasp, and the teacher held up her hand for silence. My phone vibrated with a notification, and when I looked down, my blood went cold. Someone had sent a mass email to the whole school with the subject line, "What you did to Eden." I knew right away that Sunshine had found her way to expose everyone, even with the building locked down. My hands were shaking as I opened it, because I had to know what she was showing everyone. Kids around me started opening the email too, even though the teacher was telling them to stop looking at their phones. The attachment loaded, and it was full of screenshots from group chats, where students planned the whole catfishing thing. There were videos too of Eden standing outside the winter formal in her dress, waiting in the cold. The email had a list of every single person who participated or stood by and watched without helping. The room started filling with whispers and gasps as people recognized names on the list. There were popular kids and student council members and even some teachers who saw Eden crying and did nothing about it. One girl near me started sobbing really hard when she saw her boyfriend's name on the list. Right next to his name were screenshots of him laughing about the pathetic freshman who actually believed someone could love her. More evidence kept appearing in the email, like someone was adding to it in real time. There were recordings of phone calls and saved Snapchats and text messages going back 3 whole months. The detail was incredible and terrifying, because Sunshine had been collecting this proof for weeks, without anyone knowing. We heard it through the walls, this fuzzy police radio sound getting closer in the hallway. Bianca Rubin's voice came through clear enough to make out that they'd traced the email to the media lab on the 2nd floor. My heart started pounding hard, because that was just one hallway over from where Eden had her worst classes, where kids would corner her between periods. The girl next to me was still gripping my arm, and her nails were digging in. But I didn't pull away because everyone needed something to hold on to. My phone screen lit up with another notification, and the email chain was updating again with new attachments loading in. This time it was screenshots of Eden's messages to the fake boyfriend, where she talked about wanting to hurt herself and how Cole was the only good thing in her life. There were photos, too, that someone took from the gym windows of Eden standing outside the winter formal in her blue dress, waiting in the cold while snow started falling. The timestamp showed she stood there for 4 hours and 13 minutes. More files kept loading, and there were emails between administrators discussing Eden's situation and deciding not to investigate because it would cause too much disruption. One email from the vice principal said they should let kids work it out themselves. I scrolled through more messages, and Travis Vaughn's name kept showing up over and over. He was bragging in group chats about writing the fake love letters and making them sound real enough that Eden believed someone could actually care about her. The same Travis who Sunshine used to calm down with compliments was one of the main people destroying her sister. He'd posted laughing emojis next to screenshots of Eden crying at her locker. My phone started buzzing, and it was my mom calling, but I couldn't answer in the middle of lockdown. She texted right after asking if I was okay, because the news was already reporting an incident at our school. I texted back that I was safe, but my hands were shaking because I couldn't tell her I knew this was coming and tried to stop it. Through all the noise and crying in our room, I heard someone yelling in the hallway. The voice said something about visual confirmation and black clothing heading toward the gymnasium. That had to be Sunshine trying to get to where the pep rally would have been happening right now if everything was normal. She'd planned to expose everyone when the whole school was together in one place. The kid sitting next to me pulled out his phone and showed me someone was live streaming from another classroom down the hall. You could see police officers running past their door through the little window, and the comments were already flooding in. Kids from other schools were writing that we deserved whatever happened for what we did to Eden. Some were calling Sunshine a hero, and others were saying she went too far, but everyone agreed Eden didn't deserve what happened to her. The intercom crackled back on, and this time it was Taylor Medina introducing herself as the crisis counselor. She said any student in distress should text the helpline number she was about to give. I thought about Eden and how she probably needed this kind of help months ago when everyone was destroying her, but nobody offered it then. The email chain pinged again with another update, and this one made my stomach turn. It was audio recordings of phone calls where kids pretended to be Cole talking to Eden late at night. You could hear Eden crying and saying she wanted to die while the kids on the other end were trying not to laugh. One recording had Eden saying Cole was the only person who understood her anxiety, and you could hear muffled giggling in the background. The girl who sat in front of me suddenly lurched forward and threw up right there on the classroom floor. I couldn't tell if it was from fear about the lockdown or disgust from what she was seeing in the emails. The smell hit immediately and made other kids gag and move away. Our teacher had stopped trying to control anything and just sat at her desk with her head in her hands, not even looking at us anymore. The police radio chatter got louder outside our door, and we heard Bianca Rubin's voice again saying they'd established a perimeter around the media lab. She said the subject had barricaded the door from inside and wasn't responding to attempts at communication. I pictured Sunshine in there at a computer making sure every single secret came out before they could stop her. She was probably uploading everything she'd collected over the past weeks since she found out what they did to Eden. My phone kept lighting up with more notifications as the email chain grew bigger and bigger. There were chat logs going back 3 months, showing how they planned every detail of the catfishing. They'd created fake social media profiles and a whole backstory for Cole, including fake friends who would comment on his posts to make him seem real. The level of planning was sick, and it involved way more people than anyone realized. Even some kids I thought were decent had participated by sharing Eden's photos in group chats and making fun of how desperate she was for someone to love her. The live stream showed more police arriving and setting up some kind of command post in the main hallway. Parents were starting to show up outside, but they weren't letting anyone in or out of the building yet. Through all of this, I kept thinking about how Sunshine warned me and gave me a chance to keep my family safe. She chose to trust me, even though she was planning all of this, and now I was stuck here watching it happen anyway. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. The girl next to me finally let go of my arm and started crying really hard. She kept saying she didn't know it was this bad, that she thought it was just a prank, but her name was probably in those emails too. Everyone who laughed or watched or knew and did nothing was getting exposed today. My phone started buzzing in my pocket, and I saw it was my dad calling from his office downtown. I hit decline and shoved the phone back in my pocket because there was no way I could explain that I knew this was coming. The weight of my 6 a.m. call to the administrator felt like a rock in my stomach now that I could see just how much stuff Sunshine had collected about what they did to Eden. Another notification popped up on my phone showing a new attachment in the email chain. This one was a timeline Sunshine had put together showing every single thing that happened to Eden over 3 months. She documented every fake text from Cole, every mean joke in the hallways, every moment Eden was falling apart while kids watched and laughed. The timeline had screenshots of private group chats, videos kids thought they'd deleted, even security camera footage from the school hallways showing Eden crying alone. Each entry had dates and times and names of everyone involved. The principal's voice came back over the intercom, and you could hear papers shuffling in the background. He said law enforcement had the situation under control, but the lockdown would continue until further notice. His voice cracked when he said this, and I realized his own emails were probably in those leaked files too. The ones where he talked about monitoring Eden's situation, but never actually doing anything to help her. Kids around me started frantically deleting stuff from their phones. The girl who organized the whole winter formal thing where Eden waited outside for 4 hours was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. She kept grabbing her friend's arm and saying it wasn't that bad, that they were just having fun, but her friend pulled away and wouldn't look at her. Through the thin walls, we could hear the police radio in the hallway getting louder. Emmett Powers was talking to someone about evacuating the hallways next to the media lab as a precaution. That meant they were taking whatever Sunshine was doing seriously, even though I was pretty sure she never planned to actually hurt anyone physically. She just wanted to destroy them the way they destroyed Eden. The email chain pinged again with a new folder that made everyone gasp. It was labeled Faculty Failures, and it was full of screenshots from the teacher's private group chat. They were joking about Eden's drama and calling her attention-seeking. The administrators had emails saying they should just let it blow over because investigating would be too much hassle. Mrs. Carver's name wasn't in any of the bad stuff, which didn't surprise me, since she was the only one who actually tried to help Eden after everything happened. Someone started pounding on a door somewhere down the hallway and shouting something I couldn't understand. The sound made everyone in our room press closer together against the wall. Even the kids whose names were all over those emails were huddling with everyone else now, because the fear of not knowing what was happening was bigger than the shame of being exposed. My phone lit up with a text from my younger brother saying someone in his class was having a full panic attack. Their older sibling was one of the main people who pretended to be Cole, and now everyone knew. The reality was hitting all of us that Sunshine hadn't just exposed the bullies for a day or a week. She'd destroyed their reputations forever. This stuff would follow them to college and jobs and everything. A notification popped up on everyone's phones at the same time, showing Eden had posted on social media for the first time since winter formal. It was just 3 words, but they hit hard. Finally, the truth. The post already had hundreds of comments from kids at other schools saying how disgusted they were by what our school did to her. People were sharing it everywhere and tagging news stations. The police radio crackled again, and we heard them saying they were preparing to breach the media lab door. I found myself hoping Sunshine would just give up peacefully, because despite everything she'd done today, I still cared about the girl who used to wear bright yellow cardigans and make everyone smile just by walking into a room. Part of me understood why she did this, even if it was wrong. The school failed Eden, and then they failed Sunshine too by not doing anything when she must have begged them for help. Now she was making sure nobody could ignore what happened ever again. The cops were probably going to arrest her and she'd go to jail or something, but the truth about Eden was out there forever now. Every single person who laughed or watched or participated in destroying that poor girl was exposed. Their parents would see it, future employers would see it, everyone would know what kind of people they really were. The girl next to me was still shaking and crying, but now it was different. She wasn't scared of the lockdown anymore. She was scared of going home and facing her parents when they found out she was one of the people making fun of Eden's messages about wanting to die. The emails showed she'd screenshot Eden's most desperate texts to Cole and shared them in a group chat with laughing emojis. Her life as she knew it was over, and we all knew it. Through all of this, I kept thinking about how Sunshine had trusted me with her plan. Out of everyone in this school, she picked me to warn, to keep safe. Even though I betrayed that trust by calling the administrator, she still made sure I knew to get out before this happened. That unknown number that texted me was probably someone she'd asked to warn me one last time. She was still trying to protect the people she thought were decent, even while she was destroying everyone else. The Wi-Fi bars on everyone's phones suddenly dropped to nothing, and someone said the IT guy must be trying to shut down the network. But it was way too late because the emails had already sent, and now kids were using their cell data to keep sharing everything. The damage was done and spreading like wildfire across social media. Above us, we heard footsteps running hard on the 3rd floor, and then this scraping sound like someone was dragging desks around. Our teacher yelled for everyone to get under their desks, which seemed stupid since we all knew Sunshine wasn't going to hurt anyone physically. My phone buzzed with another text from that unknown number saying, "She wants you to know Eden is safe at home today." That hit me hard because of course Sunshine made sure her sister wouldn't be here to see all this chaos happening. She was still protecting Eden, even while destroying everyone who hurt her. The kid next to me showed me his phone, where someone was live streaming from a classroom in the East Wing. The video showed cops walking someone out in handcuffs, but it wasn't Sunshine. It was Travis, and apparently he'd tried to leave his classroom to go confront her, and the cops grabbed him right away for breaking lockdown rules. The principal's voice came back on the speakers saying they were starting controlled evacuation of the East Wing, which meant they probably had Sunshine trapped somewhere over there. He said West Wing stays in lockdown, which meant we were stuck here reading more of these brutal emails that kept somehow appearing. Someone found Eden's old Instagram from before everything happened and started passing their phone around. The posts showed her smiling with sunshine at the beach last summer and getting excited about starting high school and hoping she'd make good friends. Seeing how happy and innocent she looked before they destroyed her made the girl next to me start crying hard. My phone lit up again with the unknown number texting. She says, "Thank you for trying to stop this peacefully." My stomach dropped because that meant Sunshine knew I'd called the administrator this morning, but she did it anyway. She knew I tried to stop her, and she was thanking me for at least trying the right way first. Outside, we could hear sirens getting louder and closer like a whole fleet of cop cars, or maybe ambulances were pulling up. Nobody had said anyone was hurt, but the sound made everything feel more serious and final. There was no going back from what was happening today, and we all knew it. The email chain pinged with a new attachment, and when I opened it, my hands started shaking. It was a video compilation someone had made of every single time Eden got humiliated at the school. There was footage from the hallways of kids laughing at her, and the cafeteria where they threw food at her, and online screenshots of the horrible things they posted about her. I had no idea it was this bad or this organized or that. So many people were involved in making her life hell. Even kids I thought were decent were in these videos pointing and laughing, while Eden tried to disappear into herself. The police radio in the hallway crackled, and we heard Bianca's voice saying they'd made contact with the subject and were negotiating. I pictured Sunshine surrounded by cops in the media lab, probably still at the computer making sure every last piece of evidence got out before they stopped her. My phone buzzed with another text from my mom saying she was on her way to get me as soon as they let parents on campus. I stared at the message knowing I'd never be able to explain how I knew this was coming, how I'd warned the school, but also understood why Sunshine did it anyway. The principal's voice came back over the intercom, and he sounded completely defeated when he announced the threat was contained and they'd start evacuation soon. He said seniors would go first, and you could tell from his voice he knew his career was done after those leaked emails showed him ignoring Eden's situation for months. The kid next to me showed me his phone where parents were already going crazy on Facebook, demanding everyone get fired and investigated. The comments were spreading fast with people from other towns sharing it and saying this was going to be on the news everywhere. We finally got told to line up for evacuation, and everyone moved in this weird, shocked silence. The girl who organized Eden's whole humiliation at winter formal tried to walk near me, but I stepped away because I couldn't pretend I didn't know what she'd done. We filed through the hallway in a single line with teachers watching us, and I saw the media lab door hanging off its hinges with police tape everywhere. There was no sign of Sunshine, but someone had taped a printed photo of Eden to the wall. It was the one from winter formal, where she was waiting in her dress in the cold. Outside the parking lot was completely insane with cop cars and news vans and parents trying to find their kids. I spotted my mom's car near the tennis courts, but also saw Eden and her parents by an ambulance. They weren't hurt or anything, just getting checked by counselors who were making sure Eden was okay. Taylor came up to me with another counselor and said they needed to talk to anyone who'd had contact with Sunshine recently. I knew right then I'd have to tell them about our conversation on the bleachers and the warning and everything else. Before I could get to my mom's car, I saw them bringing Sunshine out in handcuffs. She was still wearing all black, and her face looked totally calm, like she'd done exactly what she wanted to do. Our eyes met across the parking lot for just a second. She mouthed something that looked like thank you before the cops put her in the car. I'll probably spend forever wondering if she meant thank you for trying to stop her, or thank you for being decent when nobody else was. The next 3 days turned into this crazy blur of cops interviewing me and counseling sessions and news people everywhere. They charged Sunshine with trespassing and making threats and computer crimes, but people online were calling her a hero for exposing the truth about what happened to Eden. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from kids at the school, asking if I'd known what she was planning. I kept telling them I'd tried to stop it, but nobody seemed to care about that part. The news showed our school on every channel with reporters talking about cyberbullying and how the administration failed Eden. They interviewed parents who were demanding the whole school board resign, and lawyers who said there would be lawsuits. I had to meet with Emmett 3 different times to go over exactly what Sunshine had told me that day on the bleachers. He kept asking if she'd mentioned specific plans or weapons, and I kept explaining she never meant to hurt anyone physically. The damage was all digital and social and permanent in a different way. My mom made me see a therapist who specialized in trauma because she said witnessing all this was going to affect me whether I realized it or not. The therapist asked how I felt about Sunshine now, and I couldn't answer because I still didn't know. She'd trusted me with her plan, and I'd betrayed that trust by calling the school, but I'd also maybe saved people from something worse. The news kept showing Eden's parents making statements about needing better protections for kids online. They never mentioned Sunshine directly, but you could see the pain in their faces about what their older daughter had done to get justice for the younger one. Travis and his parents hired a lawyer and were trying to spin the story like he was a victim too. But everyone had seen the messages where he bragged about making Eden cry and betting money on how long she'd wait in the cold. The school announced they were bringing in grief counselors and anti-bullying experts for when classes resumed next week. They sent emails about new policies and zero tolerance and mandatory reporting, but it all felt way too late. Eden's story was everywhere now, with people sharing their own experiences of getting bullied and schools doing nothing. Some girl in Texas started a petition to make cyberbullying a felony, and it got 100,000 signatures in 2 days. My brother kept asking me questions about what really happened in the media lab and why Sunshine picked me to warn. I didn't have good answers for him because I barely understood it myself. All I knew was that Sunshine saw something in me that made her think I deserved to be saved from what she was about to do. The principal announced his resignation on Friday, saying he was taking responsibility for the failures in protecting students. 2 more administrators and 3 teachers also resigned before the school board could fire them. Everyone knew this was just the beginning of the consequences from what Sunshine had exposed. Monday morning, Eden walked back through the front doors, wearing the same yellow cardigan Sunshine used to wear, and everyone just stopped moving. She had this woman from the district walking next to her, and another counselor on her other side, but Eden kept her head up and walked straight to her locker like she owned the place. Kids who'd laughed at her messages about wanting to die suddenly found the floor super interesting while she passed. The girl who organized the whole catfish thing actually turned around and walked the other way when she saw Eden coming down the hall. I watched Travis try to approach her during second period, but the counselor stepped between them and told him to keep walking. He looked smaller somehow without his crew around him, and by lunch, the news spread that he'd been called to the principal's office along with 11 other kids. They started pulling students out of class one by one, and you could see their parents showing up in the parking lot looking either furious or defeated. The district brought in investigators who spent the whole week interviewing everyone who appeared in those leaked emails, and by Friday, they'd expelled Travis and his whole group for what they called severe harassment and endangerment. 3 teachers cleaned out their desks that same week, including the gym teacher who'd watched Eden waiting outside the dance and thought it was funny enough to text about. The principal didn't even make it to Friday before announcing his early retirement effective immediately, and the district sent in this whole new administration team to take over. They made us all attend these assemblies about digital citizenship and online cruelty, where experts showed us statistics about suicide rates from cyberbullying. I started meeting with Taylor every Tuesday, because the guilt about knowing Sunshine's plan kept eating at me, and I couldn't focus on anything. She had this way of asking questions that made me think about stuff I didn't want to think about, like whether I'd have done anything if Sunshine hadn't warned me. Taylor helped me understand that Sunshine wasn't completely wrong for wanting justice, but she wasn't completely right either, and that both things could be true at the same time. The school board voted to implement what they called the Eden Protocol, which meant mandatory reporting for any bullying incident and immediate intervention when kids showed signs of distress. They brought in all these experts to train teachers on recognizing warning signs and set up anonymous tip lines and peer support programs. It felt like too much and not enough all at once, because Eden had already been broken and put back together wrong. The news kept covering Sunshine's case and showing her yearbook photo next to headlines about vigilante justice and failed systems. Her lawyer argued that she'd been pushed to extremity by the school's negligence, and the prosecutor kept saying that taking the law into your own hands was never acceptable. They went back and forth for weeks while Sunshine sat in court, wearing business clothes that made her look older and sadder. The judge finally offered a plea deal for 2 years probation with mandatory therapy instead of jail time, because she said she understood the provocation, even though she couldn't condone the methods. Sunshine took it immediately and walked out of court with her parents, while reporters shouted questions she didn't answer. Eden started this support group that met every Wednesday after school in the library, where kids who'd been bullied online could talk about their experiences. I went to the 3rd meeting even though I wasn't bullied because I needed to understand how we'd all let things get so bad. Eden ran it with this quiet strength that reminded me of Sunshine before everything happened, and she had this way of making everyone feel heard without pushing them to share more than they wanted. 6 months passed before I saw Sunshine again, and it was at the grocery store where she was stocking shelves as part of her community service. She looked healthier with color back in her cheeks, and when she saw me, she actually smiled a real smile, not the dark one from before. We talked for a few minutes about small things like the weather and how my classes were going while we both carefully avoided mentioning that day in the media lab. She told me Eden was doing better and seeing a therapist twice a week who was helping her process everything that happened. Eden had made real friends in the support group who understood what she'd been through, and the sisters were slowly rebuilding their relationship even though things would never be exactly the same. Before I left, Sunshine grabbed my arm gently and said she didn't regret exposing everyone, but wished she'd found another way to get justice. I told her I understood, because sometimes the system is so broken that breaking it more seems like the only option even when you know it's wrong. The school held this big assembly about digital kindness, where they brought in speakers and showed videos about empathy, and Eden got up to speak at the end. She stood at that podium wearing Sunshine's yellow cardigan and talked about forgiveness in this steady voice that made half the auditorium cry. When she talked about the bystanders who watched her suffering for entertainment, she looked directly at those of us who'd stood by and done nothing, and I felt that guilt all over again. Summer came, and I started hanging out at the coffee shop near the community college, where I met this girl named Mia from Westfield High. She didn't know anything about what happened at our school, and I liked that at first. We went to movies and walked around the mall and talked about normal stuff like bands and shows. After 3 weeks of dating, I couldn't keep lying by not saying anything, so I told her everything one night in her car. I explained about Eden getting catfished and Sunshine's revenge, and how I called the cops on someone I cared about. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, and when I finished, she grabbed my hand and told me I did the right thing. She said she would have made the same call, and hearing that from someone who wasn't there helped the guilt fade a little. Meanwhile, Travis's parents hired some fancy lawyer and tried to sue the school district for failing to protect their son's privacy. They claimed the school should have prevented Sunshine from accessing and sharing those messages during the lockdown. The judge threw out the case after one hearing, saying the school wasn't responsible for criminal acts by students. The local news covered it and showed Travis's dad yelling at reporters outside the courthouse about how his son was a victim too. Within 2 months, the Vaughn family put their house up for sale and moved to Arizona, where nobody knew about the catfishing scandal. Sunshine finished her community service hours at the food bank and the animal shelter by the end of summer. Eden told me at the grocery store that her sister enrolled in online college courses since she couldn't come back to our school. She was taking social justice and psychology classes and getting really good grades according to their mom. Eden said Sunshine spent most of her time studying and volunteering and seemed more focused than she'd been in years. The next school year started, and Eden shocked everyone by running for student body president as a junior. Her campaign posters showed her wearing one of those yellow cardigans like Sunshine used to wear with the slogan, "Kindness and Accountability." Kids who remembered what happened to her actually voted for her out of respect or maybe guilt. She won by a huge margin and gave this speech about making sure nobody else went through what she did. She set up new programs for reporting bullying and started weekly meetings where kids could talk about problems without judgment. The support group she'd started grew into something bigger when other kids who'd been bullied online joined together. They created a non-profit organization that went to middle schools teaching younger kids about online safety and empathy. Eden led the whole thing with this quiet strength that reminded everyone of Sunshine before everything went bad. They got grants from the state and even won an award from the governor for youth leadership. I helped out sometimes setting up chairs or running the projector for their presentations. Senior year felt weird knowing I'd always be the guy who knew what Sunshine was planning. Some kids avoided me thinking I was a snitch, while others thanked me for preventing something worse. Teachers looked at me differently too, like they weren't sure if I was a hero or a traitor. I focused on my classes and college applications and tried not to think about it too much. Graduation day came, and I walked across that stage knowing I'd never fully escape what happened, but being okay with that. At least I finally did something, even if it was messy and came too late to save Eden's innocence. My parents were proud, and Mia came to watch, and that was enough for me. 2 years went by, and I was in my dorm room studying when my phone buzzed with a text from Eden. She sent me a photo of her and Sunshine standing together outside a building, both smiling real smiles. The message said, Sunshine got accepted to law school with a scholarship for victim advocacy work. They were at the campus for orientation, and Sunshine wanted me to know she was doing good. Eden said her sister talked about using the law to help people the right way this time. Looking at that photo of them together made me think about everything that happened that Thursday. The lockdown taught our whole school that staying quiet makes you part of the problem. It showed us that the kindest people can snap when pushed too far. It proved that justice and revenge can look exactly the same depending on which side you're standing on. Sometimes I still dream about Sunshine in those yellow cardigans making everyone smile. Then I remember her in all black planning her revenge, and I realize both versions were real. She was always trying to protect Eden, but the methods changed when the system failed them. What happened to Eden broke something in Sunshine that couldn't be fixed, only redirected. Now she's channeling that protective energy into law school and advocacy work. Eden turned her trauma into leadership and helping other kids avoid her pain. Travis and his family ran away from their shame, while the rest of us had to live with our choices. That Thursday changed everything for everyone who was there and everyone who wasn't. That's it for today's story. Thanks for sharing this little pocket of time with me. I hope it brightened your day even a little. Stick around by subscribing, and we'll keep spreading good vibes together.